Hello, Internet friends, and welcome to episode number 114 of FinalBossTV, your WoW endgame rating show. My name is Adam K.K. Bay. I'll be your host for this adventure today. Let's talk Legion number 6. And we are going to be talking about the one and only other half. We talked about Vengeance a bit on the last show. Today is all about Havoc Demon Hunter. And slow your roll. I know, like, we're doing a whole show to Havoc, and the last show was, like, split 50-50 with Vengeance. But let's be real. More people DPS than tank, all right? Let's just be more people DPS than tank. So it just makes sense to devote all episode to a new DPS spec. And we'll, of course, talk about tanking more in the future. But today is only Havoc. And it's not a 2-button DPS class. It was at BlizzCon. Please. We're going to drill that into your heads today, that it is a lot more involved than that. And who better to join me than the only two people that are really spearheading both the community and the notes and the guides and the math and the testing for this new spec. Besides two returning guests, of course, that might be playing the spec a bit. I know one of you nerds is going to be switching, possibly. Hi, Calli. Hi.
Hi. I might be, yes, I'm actually pretty set on switching. I don't know if it's going to specifically be to Demon Hunter, but I'm split between basically Demon Hunter and Shaman right now.
Well, you can't come up with either of those, because one of them is the right one. I won't tell you which one.
Both are right.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, so you're leaving the Windwalker behind, you think, then?
Well, my raid team already has Windwalker, and in my opinion, he is a hell of a lot better than I am, pardon the language. So, it just doesn't make sense to have two Windwalkers, and on top of that, I've kind of been itching for a little bit of a change. So, yeah, and I tried out Demon Hunter, I'm like, oh, this is actually what Windwalker was supposed to be.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I mean, there are parallels.
There are a lot of parallels between it and basically every other melee class.
Well, that's true, too. I was going to go on, like, the I-Beam Fist of Fury parallel, but...
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. But alrighty, great, awesome stuff. And there's Wordup, who has written the only and the giganticest guide on the class. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hello. I'm back. This time not talking about Shaman for once.
Yet.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Next week we'll feature Wordup and me talking about Shaman for an hour and a half. No.
That's if we don't do any tangents this time, which is really hard to keep myself from doing.
I'm sure there will be. But yeah, you have done a lot of testing, and you might be main ulting the Demon Hunter, the Havoc Demon Hunter in Legion, yeah?
Yeah, it all depends on how desired they are, really.
True.
I'll be picking whatever's OP for my ult.
Oh, wow.
Let's be honest, there's lots of demons in Legion, so they all need to be hunted, so someone's got to play a Demon Hunter, right? So
It's true.
Someone's got to throw themselves on that grenade.
That's very true.
And that, I mean, it's not like it's a popular class or anything, so someone's going to take the hit, and that must be me.
Oh, not a popular class at all.
Yeah.
No one's excited about it.
Yeah.
Counting myself, we've actually had, I think, 3 people interested in switching out of 27 raiders that we have, which is actually, in my opinion, a very small number, but I think a lot of it just comes from the early impressions. So.
And that's only for Havoc? That doesn't include Vengeance at all?
Our tanks are going to try it, but they're pretty set in their classes, I think.
That's the one weird thing about an expansion that is this, I guess, evolving as Legion, that we have a new melee spec. Technically, we have 2 new melee specs because we have Survival Hunter too. And we have a new tank, but because every single spec is getting so much rework, like for enhancement, for me and Word, we're both like, it's a brand new effing class. Like, everything is different. So it's hard to, like, think of changing mains when your main you played for all of Warlords is changing so much to go like, no, I'm going to drop that all because you're going to relearn your new class anyway.
Yep. So it's a perfect time to be basically re-rolling. And I've told a lot of people, like, don't even be set on saying, oh, I'm going to be a shaman for sure, whatever your main currently is. Wait till PTR because that's whenever you really get to try out all of the specs and see which one you like the best.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a wild expansion right now, and it's hard to convey. I kind of, I gushed a lot about Warlords before it came out about how the garrison system is going to be, like, a lot going on there, and the new art assets coming into the game, and the new character models, and the new cask system, and the new server upgrades, and the response time. And garrisons were great for like 6 weeks, but then the rest of Warlord still holds true. Obviously, the VUs were needed. Obviously, the cask system is much better for hot fixing and server stability. The new server response time, it's all like back-end stuff. But Legion is just like everything you knew about your spec, oh, the whole thing is changing. And that's the first time it's ever happened on this scale. Like, Cataclysm had big changes for healers, like the whole, like, a new healing meta, as I air quote it.
Kind of, yeah. I played healer at that point in time, so...
Yeah. That's when
there were definitely some major changes in terms of, like, the CDs that I remember. And I remember being a shaman and being like, I don't have one. And then they gave us Spirit Link.
It's true. Yeah.
Healers change every expansion so much.
Yep.
But this time around, literally everyone's getting the same treatment. There's not a class that I recognize very well anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's getting, well, in all of my testing I've done so far, yeah, they're getting more fantasy. Obviously, the only one we haven't been able to test is the Destruction Warlock. That's still not available yet because their class is not, their artifact quest line is not done. But in all the ones I'm tested so far, out of all of them but one, it's all very... They're really trying to drill home and reinvent the core of the specs, because over the last couple of expansions, they just kind of like, give them this, give them that, give them this, give them that. Yeah, it'll be fun. That's a cool idea. But they have to cut away that and really kind of grind in. So, what the actual identity of the class is going to be. But before we get too much deeper into that, I want to take a quick second to general talk for a moment, just to break the ice. So one of us here has actually seen Batman vs Superman, but
unfortunately,
I have.
I bit that bullet. Yeah.
So how was it? Word, was it?
As I said before, I didn't hate it, but I did strongly dislike it. If the tickets hadn't have been free, I would have been probably on the hate wagon though. I must say, it was not the film I wanted to see.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. That's so unfortunate. I mean, it's getting a ton of flack right now. Rotten Tomatoes destroyed it. I listened to the last episode of Don't Get Your Hopes Up with Mike B and Lore, and they talked about it quite a bit. And then I watched the Half in the Bag with Red Letter Media, and they weren't very nice either. But so my real question though is you have to pick between, like, if you have a favorite of the DC universe, or do you like Batman or Superman more? But that might have changed with this movie because they sort of threw all the lore out the window with that Batman anyway.
Well, Batman was still cooler in it.
Okay.
And Ben Affleck was really good as well.
I mean,
probably the only really good part about it.
Yeah. If you watch any Kevin Smith movie, Ben Affleck's in, like, all of them, pretty much.
Yeah.
And he's actually a really good actor. I was actually really excited to hear him as Batman, because I will admit it, I actually do prefer Batman over Superman, because I work in tech. He actually uses technology. He doesn't have magical spells and stuff. But they also just completely ruined Superman and Man of Steel, so I'm not really having any high hopes here.
Yeah.
Oh, Superman was just... He killed every scene that he was in. And I don't mean he killed it, he just killed the scenes. So it was just awkward when it was on. Yeah.
Well,
it was... I like, the Batman scenes were really cool, but then you knew that a Superman scene was coming after, and so you just sort of dread it. They just ruined that whole hero.
Yeah, and watching the previews, it's like, you're both heroes. I'm sorry, but the whole plot that they're trying to convey doesn't make sense, especially because Justice League. Come on. Who didn't watch Justice League as a kid? Yeah. If you didn't, go watch it. I think it's on Netflix, because it's actually a pretty good series.
My favorite character of the two would have to be Martha.
Oh, God. If you haven't seen that is the hands down worst.
She's the real star of the
ever
show.
Seen.
And by she, I mean both of them.
Just the word.
Just the word Martha now. All right, now a real question you could both be possibly on the same team or on different teams about. Crunchy or smooth peanut butter? Calli, go.
Jesus. Oh, God. Okay, they have their own uses. For a sandwich or, like, anything that you're spreading on, smooth. Hands down smooth. If you're like me and you're just kind of being fat and you're binging on Netflix and eating a bottle of, or rather a container of peanut butter, you're going to get crunchy, because that needs to be eaten on its own.
All right. Word up. What you got?
We don't even really get peanut butter over here. It's
what?
like not that common.
What?
I just have a bag of peanuts instead.
I thought you were in a first world
This
country.
thing, it's just not even a normal thing.
You don't have peanut butter?
Yeah.
How are you alive?
No, we just get peanuts and then a bag of salt and just told to go for it. I know it's really hard, but just at all, we just had jam sandwiches instead. I suppose jelly.
I'm so sorry. I can help sponsor a visa if you like.
That's so weird. What? That is... Okay.
I
That's
couldn't
interesting.
live
I know,
that
it's
way.
a touchy
Peanut
question.
butter is like my number one favorite food, or flavor, I guess I should say.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm in the smooth camp.
Like living
myself.
without Nutella. But we do get Nutella.
To be fair, like I admit it, I actually don't like Nutella because it tastes like hydrogenated oil.
Same.
I like the chocolate hazelnut spread, the off-brand stuff, because it actually tastes like chocolate hazelnut spread.
See, that's fine as well. As long as the spoon fits in the jar, then it's fine.
Yeah.
Have you ever had Biscoff spread? Biscoff, those little cookies. They make a spread that tastes just like it, but it's a spread, and it is good. It is way bad for you, but it is good. It is just like...
It's like marshmallow fluff.
It's like spreadable cookie. Oh, it's fantastic. Fantastic. Alrighty. Well, back over to the Legion stuff now. Let's dive into the thick, gooey center. Because we talked about peanut butter. See what I did there? The little... Yeah.
Peanut butter's not gooey.
Segway, yeah.
This is my show, damn it! No, I'm just kidding. So, Havoc Demon Hunter, the first thing I have in the notes is there's this huge, weird community mumbo-jumbo fluff around that happened at BlizzCon that sort of perpetrated the different corners of the places you could talk about this kind of stuff and how the community's been seeing this thing. And I tested this class for almost 4 hours in the stream. I have probably the most watched video right now on Havoc online, at least in my known circle of YouTubers and stuff like that. And the first thing I want to drill home is that people were like, oh, Havoc looks so easy. Oh, it only has 2 buttons, blah, 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 blah. But it looks amazing, and it does. The new animations are fantastic. So brass tacks, I'm going to you on this one first. It started out pretty bad, but where has it gone to now? And have the patches and iterations so far in the development cycle really helped grow the class? What do you think so far? Like a general...
It's like night and day comparing the first build to where it is now. Like where it started, you had 2 talent tiers, and you just had a couple of buttons, and nothing was really tuned properly. Chaos Strike was really strong, Demon's Bite was really weak, and you pressed I-Beam because it looked really cool. Didn't even matter what damage it did. And then they add the talents in slowly, and the talent tier now is really busy. You can pick so many talents, and it's so versatile. Probably the most robust talent tier I've wager that I've ever seen on any class. So you can just pick so many different things and go so many different directions and they're all quite even at the moment. So you just get to pick how you want to play it or what's best on a fight. And they fill out the rotation so well that it is actually, you can get to the point where it's overwhelming. It's probably more busy than most classes that will be considered like busy classes. So the whole, it's too easy, it has 2 buttons thing is just complete like hogwash. It's just not true. Right. It's just a lie at the moment. It's still like going around.
I would bounce off of that too. You can make almost any class into a 2-button rotation. So far I've tested obviously Havoc, Windwalker, Mistweaver. Mistweaver obviously doesn't count here since it's a healing class, which doesn't, as well as Frost Mage, which is a long story. Basically any of them you can turn into a 2-button rotation. I had my Frost Mage basically with 2 or 3 actual DPS buttons because I have no idea what I'm doing because I haven't played Mage in like 2 expansions now. So saying, oh, Demon Hunter is a 2-button class, well, that can be made true for Windwalker. That can be made true even for Enhancement Shaman. I actually did that. It was boring. I don't recommend it. But yeah, they do have a passive for every tier for most classes. The other side of it is that we're getting all of our other classes with their full talents, whereas Demon Hunters, they don't have their full talents until 110.
Right.
So it's kind of comparing apples to oranges at that point if you're not looking at it from the PvP server.
Yeah, the big thing with passives is that even if you take the passive talents on the tiers, a lot of the passives buff up a spell that you wouldn't normally use. So you start with that 2-button rotation, but by the time you fill out the talent tree, even if you push really down to the lowest, you're still going to be pressing 3, maybe 4. So it's equal to any other class that you can pick. It's just sort of like it's just like a spun yarn now. It's just sort of, it's not real anymore.
Yeah, and like someone just pointed out in chat, how do you have 2-button enhance? Well, all of this is an exaggeration.
It's exaggerated, yeah.
Even Demon Hunter was never 2 buttons. Come on, we
Right.
always had IP. That was 3 buttons.
Yeah, it's. I mean, even like the bare minimum classes that people want to argue about say the Arcane Mage, right, or the Marksman Hunter, right now, they both have 3 core buttons, but how you use those buttons determines how the class plays. So even if Arcane does have the Arcane Blast, Arcane Missiles, and then Dump with Barrage to make sure you still have mana, how you play that properly and use your evocations, your arcane powers, that's the skill cap involved. Then you toss on talents and sprinkle on artifact perks. But with every class in Legion, going back on what we opened with the preamble here, they're trying to re-solidify the core of each class. Every class should have if you had no, that's why I always do my testing with no talents first, see what their core is. And even that, Havoc still has 4 core buttons, 2 short rotational and 2 key abilities. Too much might be like locked into Chaos Strike, but overall.
But that's a tuning thing,
right? Of course, that is very much a tuning thing. So
the big thing is that it has to start low with the number of abilities, because unlike with all the other classes where someone learns how to play it over the course of 100 levels, or DKs like over 45, 50 levels, Demon Hunters have to do it in 2 to 12, depending on which level cap you're putting it at. So you've got to start simple and then slowly add things in over time. And the best way to do that is with talents. So if you look at it, if you evaluate it at 100, then you're only getting half a story, and it's not a fair one.
Agreed.
Right.
That's what I'm pointing out with the talents. The other thing I would add on to, like, a lot of classes are being changed, but for example, Windwalker, the core of that is pretty much still the same. There are some very major changes, but just kind of adding to what you said, you're basically just learning, kind of the same stuff that you might learn from an expansion basis. You may have completely different talents. You may have completely different, some abilities are gone, some are added in, whatever. But it's still the core of the class still. And I actually kind of felt that way with my Enhancement Shaman too. It was definitely very different from what I'm used to in Warlords, but it wasn't nearly as different as whenever I went to Demon Hunter.
Right. Yeah, and I went over this in my Demon Hunter video as well, and we'll go over that. It's the next section of the show. There are, now, depending on where you want to use these builds, normally how you talent a spec is based on the fight at hand. And in Legion, actually, technically, there are going to be fights that certain specs have better snap AoE, or burst AoE, or constant AoE, or better single target burst, or better single target damage. And how you can spec is based on the encounter's going to work at hand. But with Demon Hunter, there are secondly 4 different, actual, almost like thematic builds that we've sort of built around. And where they're going to be useful and where you bitch and max based on the encounter at hand. Do you need to do AoE? Do you need more single target? Yada, yada, yada. So when I looked through all this stuff, and I talked to Wordup about this almost probably about a month ago now when we did all the Havoc testing, was that there is a movement mastery build that utilizes Fell Mastery Prepared, Fell Blade, and Momentum really well together. There is the Demonic Demon build, which is Demonic Appetite, Demon Reborn, Unleashed Power, and of course Demonic. Then there is the Bloody Glaives. These are all names I made up myself, which is Blind Fury, First Blood, Bloodlet, Chaos Cleave, Master of the Glaive, and Fell Barrage. And then there is the Illidan Wannabe, which might even be more Illidan Wannabe soon if they change something else. But Demon Blades, Fell Blade, and Chaos Blade. And these, if you spec this way, the whole way you rotate through your abilities is very, very, very different than any of the other 3. So, back to you then, Calli. How have you... the movement spec feels like the weirdest one, but they're all very... Do you agree that they're 4 different builds to go with, in a way? You're not going to build these specifically, but, there are very thematic things you can do with the... I don't think every class has these, but...
I play a Windwalker movement build. Yeah, that's just kind of what I'm used to.
Right.
I mean, for example, in Highmall, we had the 2 set PvP bonus where whenever you rolled, you then had a cheaper jab. Yeah, that prepared me for this.
Oh, yeah, it's true, yeah.
And right now we're also playing with Chi Torpedo, which plays basically almost exactly the same as Fell Rush. I mean, it's the same mechanic. I think Fell Rush just goes a little faster and a little bit further.
Right.
But it's kind of, a similar ball game. I actually love playing movement-oriented classes. That's why I love Windwalker, and that's kind of what the draw is for me with Demon Hunter. But in terms of kind of builds I've been playing with, yeah, I've played mostly with that one because Razor obviously a lot of movement and because
Sure.
it's fun for me right now. But I've also been playing a lot with the AoE build because, well, let's face it, every boss so far that we've tested has been AoE except for like one,
Yeah,
maybe
Nathendra.
two.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ursak wasn't, but I wasn't on for Ursak testing.
Okay, yeah. It's... And the movement build is weird, too, because it's very... I wouldn't say only single target, but, like, using momentum is, like, the core of this class, because you get that 4-second, 20% damage window. So it's, like, movement ability, and then you use, like, 2 GCDs. Movement ability, 2 GCDs. Movement ability, 2 GCDs. And it's almost constant. You're always fell rushing or prepared, or... You know, you're diving back in, of course, with Fell Blade, or then you're fell rushing. Like, it's so... It's almost nerve-wracking.
I actually preferred that talent whenever it also worked with Blade Dance, because an early iteration of it had Blade Dance, because then you didn't have to move as much.
Oh. Okay.
It plays quite a lot like if you've played Illidan in HOTS, that particular build. Like, you dash ahead, and then you leap back, and then you hit them a little bit, and then, you do it again, and it's really fast. Since they moved Demonic, it's got a lot of advantages in AoE now, where you can dash out, I-beam, get the buff, become a demon, dash back in, do a lot of damage, and then, wait on it a little bit, and then go back out. So it's like, I think it's a really, really cool build. I don't think I've seen something that, like, overtly puts you in danger to do damage in a while.
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, though, yeah, it kind of does go with, I'm going to throw out a buzzword here. It kind of goes with the class fantasy of Demon Hunter and what they were telling us at BlizzCon, where it's going to be an extremely movement-oriented spec.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird that you hearken the movement build more to Illidan. I guess I attributed the Illidan wannabe build because of the super auto attack focus build. With Demon Blades, Fell Blade. I mean, obviously you can still Fell Rush and jump around anyway.
If you took Fell Mastery with that, it would be actually exactly the same as playing.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Yeah, I didn't put anything for the first tier, because I didn't know if Demonic Appetite would not be better, because you can reduce the cooldown of, obviously, Chaos Blade, which makes you this super auto-attack crazy Illidan monster, which all Illidan does in Heroes of the Storm is auto-attack you, basically. He flips over you and dives, but he mostly just auto-attacks you over and over. So, yeah, it's... I mean, what do you think about the 4 different builds? Anything else to add to that? One of my subs in chat said, like, Fell Barrage is garbage, but we don't know yet about how this is going to be balanced. But
I think Fell Barrage is... It's really weird, because I think originally, because it's got the NYI tag on, people think it's not working properly, but the more I play with it, I think it's working exactly how it's supposed to. It eats all the charges, and it does the damage times the charges. So... If you cast it with 5, it does like 2,000% AP. Whereas if you cast it with 1, it's 400%.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not regenerating the charges from attacks yet. That's the one thing that's not working. But it does do a lot of damage. Quite a lot of damage in AoE as well. It's like an extra button when you want to burn AoE. It's just that, again, the alternatives on the tier, mainly it's against Demonic, which is really fun and it is really good, means that you're going to struggle to take it, and it clutters up the rotation a lot by having that extra button. You have to stand still and channel, which no one likes to do it, especially not when you're doing I-beam as well. So
it's a 1-second channel, though, taking a look at it. So that's not as bad as other channels. I'm coming from a class with a 3-second channel.
True.
But I agree with you that going against it with Demonic makes it a really hard choice, because let's face it, Demon form is basically what we really like, and Demonic, a lot of people, and I guess using the term a little loosely, a lot of people in the community have really wanted the metamorphosis that Demon Warlocks have right now, where you kind of shift in and out of it, and Demonic is kind of giving that to us, more or less. It's not as controlled per se, it's more on a CD type thing, but it is kind of what we were asking for.
Right. I mean, obviously, Demonic only works with Chaos Nova and I-beam, which then leads you into this weird sense with you kind of need to take Unleashed power with Demonic. I mean, you don't need to, but it helps a whole lot.
You're heavily encouraged, yeah.
Right, heavily encouraged, of course. And then if you're going into this demon build, as it was brought up in chat too, we were asking about, like, soul rending to me still seems ridiculously overpowered. But
Soul Rending is is good for the one simple reason that it does nothing to blur. Both of the others like break blur. They don't work. It doesn't work at all properly.
There's
Like
actually
Desperate
kind
Instincts is. Ugh.
Yeah, Desperate Instincts replaces it. Netherwalk is supposed to. Right now, it's not.
Right.
For raid testing yesterday, I was like, huh, how am I still getting blur? Why am I not getting movement speed? Oh, that's interesting. It gave me Netherwalk as an additional, hey,
Yeah, it's
this is
currently
a little
bugged.
nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with it is it could actually do nothing, and because blur is a really good cooldown on its own, like
Yeah, the changes
you
to it,
played
I
Enhancement,
really like.
Shamanistic Rage is really good, and it's basically that, but a little bit shorter. It could do nothing, and it will be better than the other two in a lot of situations where you don't want to be pacified, and you don't want to have a really bad proc that comes after you've already been hit low.
Right.
Yeah.
No, Desperate Instinct scares me. It obviously can give you 2 blurs a minute, essentially, but that's in a raid setting. I have no idea. You're gonna want to take Netherwalk for a guaranteed period
Yeah.
of time,
I mean,
or
I'm going to sound like a jerk saying this. I feel like Desperate Instincts is for that guy who kind of forgets that he has survival cooldowns.
oh no, yeah, yep,
Yeah.
that's true.
Just like healing elixirs for Monk, but,
Right.
both, they're kind of the same concept. Still not as good as Purgatory.
So going on the same like demon-oriented stuff, as we're gonna keep talking about talents here. Demon Reborn is in a weird place because they just recently moved it. And the compelling nature of Demon Reborn is very much in the burst AoE category because you get to like double I-beam or blade dance into whatever the what's the blade improved one when you go into, I forgot what it's called. What is it called? It's called, what is it called? It doesn't show up. Well, that's weird. It doesn't show up on the skill database. The improved
Hey,
blade
what?
dance version.
What are you looking for?
When you are a demon, what does blade dance become? I forgot.
Oh, Death Sweep. Sorry.
Death Sweep.
Yeah.
Death Sweep.
Yeah. Okay. But is that? Whoops! I moved my little. There we go. Where do you think Demon Reborn falls into play here?
Because it only works on activating meta. I personally think it's not very good because the other two are flat increase to your damage. First Blood also increases the damage that your meta is doing anyway because
Right.
it means that Death Sweep's doing more damage, and if you're taking Demonic, you're going to Death Sweep quite frequently. And Demon Reborn is going to reset your I-beam, so you're going to get 2 in a row once every 5 or 4 minutes, depending on your artifact. Where in that time you're also not generating any fury or spending any fury because you're
Right.
casting another I-beam. So, I mean, I guess it could have some fun uses, like if you needed to immunity soak with Netherwalk twice in like a short period of time and reset that. But otherwise,
Right.
it's up against 2 way too good talents that are good all the time in a fight, except for that one single global that maybe in really niche situations where you needed to burn AoE for like 5 seconds with a massive double I-beam, it could be taken. Otherwise, I heavily doubt it.
Well, here's the
Yeah,
counter. Go ahead.
I feel like
Calli.
it fits better in 106 talents where it would basically replace Bloodlet and put it up against Momentum and Nemesis. Nemesis is good in certain niche situations. Momentum is definitely good for the movement build, whereas this would be like, I don't know, maybe our 45-second Reaper kill or something. Kind of something like that where you're getting a quick kill. But even then, like, I agree with you, there's not really a good tier for it. Maybe 99 and replace Fell Mastery because... Well, actually, Fell Mastery is kind of cool, but...
I mean, I'd wonder if it just needs to be changed to just affect the cooldown of Metamorphosis in some way.
Agree.
Like,
Yeah.
I-beams reduce the cooldown or something like that. Because
Right.
it's just...
And having, like, something like Demonic maybe also reduce their cooldowns by a bit. Because then those two talents at that point would be like, oh, they go really well together, but Demon Reborn's still competing with things that are still cool.
Right. Well, the thing I wanted to bring up here in my testing before it was fixed was that Demon Reborn worked with Demonic, so you could blade rush or blade dance, then you could Chaos Nova, which would then make you go Demonic because using Chaos Nova or I-beam turns you in, and then you could then your Death Sweep would be reset because it's on the same cooldown of blade dance, and then you could Death Sweep again. right? Or
That is
I
the change
actually
now.
tested
They're on
this.
separate.
correct. That's what I want to make sure
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Demon Reborn only affects when you actually invoke Metamorphosis. Do you get the
Yeah.
cooldowns? And
That's the
this,
only thing
But,
it's doing. What I
yeah.
was suggesting is maybe have it so that whenever you invoke it through demonic, it just like maybe ticks down 1 or 2 seconds or something on them.
reduces some cooldowns. Yeah. Because otherwise,
The
it does
the
feel
thing with
very
the thing with Blade Dance,
gamey.
Blade Dance doesn't share with Death Sweep anymore. They've been separated, and Death Sweep's got a shorter cooldown as well. So actually resetting it is so it is only doing it on the demon abilities like the Chaos Novas and the Eye Beams.
Okay.
So right now you can take First Blood, Blade Dance, Chaos Nova, Death Sweep, and do a lot of damage even in single target. So
Okay. Yeah, it's
that hurt. That changing hurt it quite a bit as well because it's yet another ability that isn't getting changed by it.
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of just things going on here. I'm gonna bring up other talents here too, which one of the ones that I think is in a huge contention for people trying to figure out what's better is Demonic Appetite versus Blind Fury, which we were talking about this before the show, and Calli had quite a bit to talk about with the I-beam nonsense. So what?
Kind of. Yeah, like one of the things that are floating around is that, Blind Fury is going to be the default talent of that tier because on your artifact you get 15% more damage to your I-beam, so the longer channel time is more damage, and that, it makes sense on paper, but what we're kind of talking about, especially with a lot of the bosses being demons, Demonic Reborn means you're getting, what are they called?
Soul fragments.
Soul fragments.
Shattered
I was about to
souls,
call
yeah.
them chi. I was like, no, they're not
They're
chi
not
balls.
chi balls. Yeah.
Which, whenever you absorb a soul fragment, you actually get 20% increased damage against a demon. So let's see. We have an expansion that is surrounding us defeating demons. So we have, of course, a raid tier with a ton of demons. Hey, maybe this 20% uptime of damage on demons is probably going to very strongly outweigh that 15% rooted damage from Blind Fury.
Right.
That's the other thing, too, is that you're sitting there channeling for 50% longer as a melee. Let me emphasize, as a melee, which everyone knows melees actually usually need to get out of fire pretty fast.
Yeah.
And your one defensive, you're not going to put it up before I-beam just in case. So you can't use any of your mobility when you're rooted down. And the whole goal of Demon Hunter surviving is moving out of things really quickly, which you can't do because you're stood still or hovering still, which is inconvenient to say the least.
So
just a little bit, yeah.
There's a lot of things that have to go into play here, and I go into all this in the video, and to bring this up to iterate on it is why people have like really dashed this class as being so simple. Is that alright, so Demonic Appetite makes Chaos Strike have a chance to spawn a soul fragment. Consuming it also gives you 30 Fury. The passive on a Demon Hunter is that killing enemies sometimes grants soul fragments. Of course, a soul fragment, when you touch it on top of Demonic Appetite's Fury gain, it will heal you for 25% of your max health. But with Demonic Appetite spawning a soul, like that's what Calli said, you gain a 20% increased damage buff for 15 seconds. So that in and of itself is enough back and forth synergy. The real culprit here, flipping over to the artifact to bring up this before we get into it all a little more deeply, is called Feast on the Souls, where when you consume a soul fragment, it reduces the cooldown of I-beam and Chaos Nova by 5 seconds. And then again, that goes back to what we were talking about with demonic. So there's so much power in not only Chaos Strike, but also just eating these soul fragments because of how it all synergizes together. And it gives you so much potential for more I-beams, which means more demonic, which also means just so much, and more fury for more abilities, more fury going into demonic. Right. It's just a lot of it's going through all this. It's a lot of things that all synergize together with that build alone, that I wonder if that might become too much. And other
that talent just has a lot of like crazy things that are under the hood that you don't even think about when you look at it. You just think, oh, hey, when I kill stuff, I get some free fury. I occasionally get one for free, get a bit more fury. But then when you go deeper, you're also reducing your cooldowns, which means you're going to go into demonic more. You're also getting the extra damage bonus if you're breaking it off of a demon.
Yep.
And none of the other two on that tier really have any of that hidden extra massive synergy with other talents that you wouldn't even realize.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm actually a huge fan of it because otherwise we're not ever getting the soul fragments, which I actually think it's a really fun kind of thing. Like monks already get free chi every now and then from a fight like HFA or rather Hellfire Assault, where you're just killing tons of stuff, and then like I actually forget that we have the afterlife passive until I'm in that fight. I'm like, oh hey, I got chi balls over here. That's kind of cool.
Right.
But I actually think it's a really fun mechanic because otherwise you're not actually getting it outside of, adventuring in the world, and then that to me is kind of a letdown because it's like you never realize it's even there, except for on the occasional mass AoE small small mob fight.
Because you have to land the killing blow to get a soul fragment in the first place. And for raiding, as we talk about most all the other show, if you don't get that synergy, it feels like it's a huge gulf in your spec. So that
I think that having the synergy is really nice.
Of course.
Go ahead.
The souls could have been capitalized on a bit more. That's why I like it so much, because it is the only thing that does it. Like, I was honestly expecting a tier to just be dedicated to souls in some way and do things, because there was all these references to them in the artifact tree, and they are a pretty important mechanic because you are ripping the soul out of something that's pretty demon huntery after all. And then it was one talent and that was it. So it makes me heavily biased towards it just because of that.
That's one thing that I wonder about if it could be reworked, is that because for the Vengeance Demon Hunter, you have an entire tier dedicated to your sigils, which is a very interesting interaction with how the Vengeance works with your sigils, right? And for Havoc, though, that's the thing. Souls are a big thing. So, but why? Because Blind Fury is just kind of okay. And then, of course, you can combine Blind Fury with, what it's called, Anguish of the Deceiver on your artifact weapon, which is each time your I-beam deals damage to a target, you cause anguish on the target. When anguish expires, it deals damage based on how many times it's stacked up. So a longer I-beam gives more stacks of anguish. So it's bursty. It's obviously a DPS gain. But, again, you lose the chance to have any soul synergy. And you also only have so many I-beams in a fight, whereas otherwise with Feasting the Souls and eating souls during a fight, you get just more I-beams overall. So, what's better? I would have loved to see a tier all about how souls interact with you, absolutely. Yeah, it would have been great. Like, Blind Fury just kind of seems like, Fell Mastery is cool, but that could be moved. So, yeah, I don't know, I wonder. There's too much in how big of a deal Chaos Strike is in the first place for Havoc Demon Hunters, and then adding on Demonic Appetite just puts even more weight on one button. And that might be really bad. Yeah,
Chaos Strike is in a weird place, because unlike other specs that you have your spell and then you put talents that make it better,
sure,
or you have traits that make it better, Chaos Strike is already really good. So all of the talents and all of the traits are trying to bring everything else up and and remove the damage from Chaos Strike by increasing their damage instead, so that there's more opportunity cost there for not pressing the other buttons, which is a really weird way of doing it, and it makes it hard to evaluate Chaos Strike. But Chaos Strike is crazy strong right now.
No, it absolutely is. I don't know.
Yeah, but tuning.
That's all about tuning, of course. But I mean, tuning in numbers is one thing, but normally the talents are more of a design step. So,
but we've also just basically gotten our talents redone almost every build. I look forward to the next build where maybe Demon Reborn now actually turns you into, I don't know, just a demon 100% of the time or something silly.
Well,
that was a joke.
Yeah,
that was a joke.
Walk me through some more of these other talents too, if you want to. Word, like the other build that's really awkward here, which could be a thing, is like the constant cleave bloodlet master of the glaive build. I'm like, so what is?
Oh, that's really busy. You get quite overwhelmed with how many buttons you have to press, because you've got to keep glaive toss on cooldown, you've got to keep blade dance on cooldown, you've got to try and get into, well, it depends. If you take Fell Barrage, you've got to keep that on cooldown, or if you take Demonic, you've also got to keep Death Sweep on cooldown, and you have to keep them all on cooldown. And generally speaking, you take Prepared with everything for the free Fury, unless you want to play with Demon Blades, wherever that ends up. So you've got to keep that on cooldown as well. So when you start adding that in, there's 6 things that have to be kept on cooldown, and they're all different cooldowns. Some of them might line up a little bit, so you've got to not clash, and you've got to keep them all going. And you do actually end up running out of just completely run out of steam. You can get
So what you're
completely lost.
Yeah, so what you're saying is basically 2.5 button rotation totally.
Of course, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no depth. No depth of actually trying to keep everything on cooldown similar to, I don't know, a lot of classes currently.
Right. That was the biggest thing I noticed with this build is they moved, because in my video, at the time, the 102 tier I had deemed the rotation changing tier. Whereas if you don't take First Blood, or at the time Bloodlet was where Demon Reborn was, if you don't take First Blood, you basically never really use Blade Dance. Like, it's kind of like, if there's multiple targets, sure. If you don't take Bloodlet, you never use Glaive Toss. As Wordup, whatever it is, math in his guide, like, it doesn't do any damage just to Glaive Toss. It's just a waste of a GCD. And
you basically can use it while you're charging in if you have to.
Right.
I personally don't.
Right.
Because I use other abilities to, actually do damage.
So it's weird now that your rotational choices don't really have an effect because you can just take Bloodlet all the time now, which still means you can use Glaive Toss on cooldown normally because the extra bleed damage you get is worth the button press. But before you had to choose one of the three, and the third being adding a new build with his Fellblade, which is just also just like not only fun but way too good right now. So it's weird that they must have heard the community crying or whining about like, oh, we only have 2 or 3 buttons. Wah! So they're like, all right, here, if you don't want the movement build and you don't think you're going to be able to min-max Nemesis properly, you can throw your glaive over and over and over again in combat.
Well, it's almost like they've heard them all saying that there's only 2 buttons, so they've gone, right, okay, then, well, here's like 7 abilities, and you can have them all at once.
Right.
Let's see if you can manage that now, because that's what you wanted, and they can't.
I'll toot my own horn here, too. I also wrote up, this basically really long essay of, these are, the talents. This is why we're seeing all these complaints about rotation, is like, we don't have any real interaction at the time. This was actually before the build that actually, in my opinion, made Demon Hunter really fun. Mm-hmm. And that was actually just from sitting and talking to some people, and they were like, yeah, it just feels like Fury isn't that useful, and like a lot of the talents aren't that great. And I was like, all right. So I sat down, it took me like maybe 45 minutes, and I wrote up this really long document kind of discussing, hey, this is why it sucks. And I'm actually kind of happy because it did bring a lot of change. I don't want to say, oh, I caused this, because a lot of it reflected the same community feedback.
Sure.
There was also a long forum post that basically said the same thing. So I guess TLDR, yeah, we started out sucking a lot. It wasn't necessarily a 2-button rotation, but they got feedback and they acted on it.
Oh, they definitely did. I don't know if Demon Reborn is in the right place anymore, because it still is like the one talent that you're like, okay, I'm going to get like maybe 2 metamorphosis an entire fight. Normally only 1, so most fights don't last 10 minutes long. And most fights you just can't go. You don't go. At least some of the fights right now, you can't use cooldowns on the pull that we've tested so far, because you need to use them like soon after into the pull, which offsets everything. But yeah, that's just raid testing. But it is good to see that they have actually really changed where they were like 2 builds ago. I didn't want to test the class at the time because it was like, there's nothing to do here. There's like 1 build and you're like, okay. So it's a little bonkers. Sort of playing a little bit of devil's advocate here. Is there a build that you foresee? I'll do a word up first on this one. I'll actually put up on the screen the whole time. That you feel like is probably the best or most rounded build, or one that you might be playing the most of in Legion, and why? I guess walk me through the talents you think, sir.
Right. So this is assuming that Demon Blaze doesn't get changed to not remove Demon's Bite, because that's something that supposedly is happening. Mm-hmm. I'd say Demonic Appetite plus Prepared. The 3rd tier could go either way, but at the moment it's Fellblade, really Fellblade. And then Momentum, Unleashed Power, and Demonic is, I'd say, the most rounded one that you're going to get the most out of in single and AoE. Mm-hmm. And, well, Chaos Cleave could come up there if it starts working, but it doesn't work in almost every possible sense you could imagine right now, so it's really hard to say whether it's good or not.
I'm curious what you mean by that, because whenever I was, at least on Cenarius, I actually used that for a pull, and it was definitely hitting stuff. By which I mean it was definitely cleaving.
Okay.
It does cleave, but at the moment it only cleaves one of the hits. The hit can or can't proc the fury regen completely.
Right.
Like it's tied to whether your main hand offhand crits. I think there's some really weird things as to what's causing the trigger on it, and so it's kind of weird. But unleash power if you take demonic anyway.
It does only say it's going to cleave one target. It doesn't say it's going to be a Blade Fury type cleave.
Well,
Oh no.
I guess that's a good thing to side note over here. I didn't put this in the notes, but I just remembered that there is an interesting mechanic going on with Chaos Strike overall. And again, that's your main bread and butter of the Havoc Demon Hunter build, where the tooltip just reads, you slice your target for 650% of weapon damage as chaos damage, and then critical strikes do not consume the fury. You have to spend the 40, and then it refunds the 40 fury. But however, Word had to show me this when I was testing, that it's a yes or no roll system, because Chaos Strike actually hits twice. It's half the damage both hit, or it's a main hand offhand proportion of the damage the way it matches your animation. But Word, it actually has it will never have one part of it critting and one not. The whole thing either crits or it doesn't crit at all, right?
Yeah, it's just a single roll at the moment, which is quite strange, but it's also a lot easier to evaluate. Like, I'm guessing that the Fury refund is coupled to whether it crits or not, and then it just rolls the offhand from that.
Sure. Yeah, it's just weird to notice because you're talking about Chaos Cleave because it hits two times.
Yeah, I was just making sure that I was understanding what you were saying.
Right.
I understand what the ability does. I was just trying to figure out what you were saying with it not working right.
I actually, when I was testing Chaos Cleave, and I put it in my notes that it actually cleaves behind you because based off your hitbox, so you actually get butt cleave, which is really funny. But it does
clearly you're farting.
Well, I mean, it makes
the hitboxes are crazy on some of these talents. Like First Blood hits the one that's out in the top left of you. The first one that it actually physically hits is the one who gets the bonus damage. So if you're AoE and it's not your target, it's not the one right in the middle, it's not the giant demon, it's the little imp that stood vaguely by his foot that's going to get nuked, and then everyone else is going to get a small amount of damage.
Yeah, like we were talking about in the Demon Hunter Discord, Mardoom. I was like, yeah, it really sounds a little bugged to me that it's specifically going for the top left. I get that it's a point blank, but if you're looking at it logically, it's like, it should really be favoring your target if you think about it. I understand, how point blanks work. And I'm like, that just, it sounds very unintuitive if it's specifically hitting this guy over here that you're not even looking at and aren't really in the hitbox of.
Right. No, there are a couple of weird things like that too. I mean, I think going back on how Chaos Cleave even works is because, and how Chaos Strike works is because the animation of the Demon Hunter is very spinny because you have glaives. The butt cleave makes sense because after you hit with your first weapon,
it's going down like
they
this.
change positions, right? So it's smart, but also unless you know that, you won't ever know it does that, right? You don't never know that that's why it does that or how it works with your.
I would say more why, because the default UI now has the battle text on, so that's how I actually noticed it. I was like, hey, it's like I'm farting on this guy. This is great.
Right. So then, how about before I ask about a couple other talents and we move on to the artifact, Calli, what about your build thought? Or is it similar to what Wordup just went through?
It's actually pretty similar. I've actually played around with Nemesis a little bit, as well as Demon Reborn, because Demon Reborn actually does work with Nemesis, but I'm kind of in the same camp with Wordup, where I think that Demon Reborn is a cool idea, but it's not going to work outside of 30-second fights, basically. So I'm actually going for Fellblade with that as well. Because we're supposed to be a movement-oriented class, and that was extremely useful in raid testing. Bloodlet, I haven't played around with as much just because it's such a short thought, and you already have so many kind of things going on, but it is something I've actually played around with a little bit for single-target type fights. In terms of that, I actually have been flipping between Demonic and Chaos Blades. Chaos Blade seems like it might be a little undertuned. It's not as interesting, but it works if you want to go with the kind of bursty build. And actually it does work as well with Demon Reborn. So I was kind of testing out a few bursty cooldown related builds just to try those out. But the downside, again, kind of comes down to Demon Reborn not working very well.
Right. And actually, you just segued me right into what I was going to, two things I was going to bring up, make sure we cover all these, is that Nemesis is very gamey it feels very video gamey. I mean, it works just sort of like not marked for death for rogues, but also not marked for death for rogues, where on certain fights that all share the same type throughout the entire encounter, you gain a ton of benefit from this, most likely. But it also has to be make sure you maintenance it the whole fight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
like,
basically what I'm seeing is, I can't wait till I have weak auras.
oh, right, of course. That is a
Yeah.
huge point of this.
I think the nerf to it probably hurt it quite badly though. Last build where they cut it in half, so it's only 1 minute that it lasts, which is a bit
where it's,
like there
it's
are a
half of
few
its
really a few really weird nerfs came in. Like didn't mention earlier that Annihilate doesn't AoE anymore, which is a huge implication on how strong Metamorphosis and Demonic is.
Right.
Because it's just single target now. You've just got Death Sweep, and so with Nemesis only being half the duration, it means that it's only averaging at like 5%. And it could only, if you don't do it right, you could end up with it stuck on a target that doesn't die, and so you have to hit them. You're not getting the AoE bonus.
Yeah.
Basically, you're putting it on the little lads. You're not putting it on the boss.
Right. Yeah, right. That's how Nemesis works. You would debuff, like on Scorpiron. You would hit one of the small scorpion, which is a beast. It dies, then you gain the minute-long version that would last on every other scorpion plus the boss.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, he's also a beast as well. He could be an elemental, but I'm pretty sure it's all beast. But that's how it would work.
Yeah.
Right?
Or more recently, Scenarios, you probably want to put it on one of the little wisps, because those are constantly spawning.
Yeah. So you get the extra damage to all elementals throughout the whole fight. Well, at least for the periods that you have the debuff up,
Yeah, but again, like, momentum is kind of what I was going for with it, though, just because you can get a ton of uptime, plus most of the fights were very movement-oriented.
Right. And then you brought up Chaos Blades. But this is the one talent that I was talking with Word about that I don't know if it still holds true, is... So the stat priority of the Havoc Demon Hunter looks very much like crit mastery and then haste versatility, most likely, right? Because like crit is a huge deal, and then mastery is also a huge deal. So, but
at the moment, what I've seen is it's like crit up here, and then mastery down here, and then everything else like is on the floor.
Off your camera,
possibly like 2 times the value of anything else. It's like if you think WoD Shadow Priests, where they're putting crit over their primary stat, it's not that far off for how it is for Havoc right now, and it's all because of Chaos Strike.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then bringing up Chaos Blades, and in a way Demon's Blade, which may or may not be changing soon to not take away Demon's Bite or still take it away. But just focusing on Chaos Blades alone, it is a 2-minute cooldown where you increase the damage of your auto attacks by 300%. And it grants your mastery damage bonus to all of your attacks that wouldn't otherwise benefit from it for 12 seconds. So as Calli said, it's very bursty, but...
It is, yeah.
This favors haste and mastery so much, though.
It does. And I actually thought that it wasn't as interesting as Demonic or how Fel Barrage sounded. I haven't tried Fel Barrage out.
Right.
But it is actually kind of a nice burst cooldown for, let's say, if you have tendon type things. But yeah, the problem is it's competing with 2 much more interesting talents.
No, it is. And
it has got some weird things on it as well. Like the mastery scaling that it adds to the auto attacks, it's 300% plus 3 times your mastery. So if you have 33% mastery, it's 399% on your autos.
Really?
And
it's also weird that
all of your attacks.
Yeah. So Demon's Bite gains your mastery exactly, so that gains 33%. Your Chaos Blade is going to do your auto attacks is 99. If you take Demon Blades, that gets the 99% that auto attacks would instead of the 33% because it's an auto attack, but it doesn't gain the 300, which is really confusing. And I spent a good while really confused by that. But yeah.
So okay, because I was going to bring up now to wrap this and then move on to artifacts. Is the mastery for the Demon Hunter is it increases your chaos damage and your movement speed by the same percentage. But because it applies to both movement and a chaos damage amp, which ignores all armor, of course, because it's chaos damage, it's magic, and it has, that it's actually, like, it takes a lot more mastery to gain, like, a percentage versus, like, I looked at, like, my Demon Hunter on the PvP realm, and it has, like, 16%, and then my shaman has like 34%. Like it's a double difference in the elemental damage bonus because you gain movement speed too, which movement speed is also a DPS stat. And if you don't know why it is, you might not be rating mythics, but that's a DPS stat. So, is it too devalued because crit is so high in worth for Chaos Strike, or is like should your Chaos damage be higher and then your movement speed be lower? Should they not be the exact same like split? Because that's
I definitely have a lot of thoughts on this.
Okay.
So I agree with you that movement speed is definitely a DPS stat. The problem is that it's really hard for us to quantify. Like, oh, X% movement speed is X% damage. We can't really quantify it that way. The other downside is I could see our movement speed being nerfed in future tiers if it goes out the bat, too high in terms of scaling, 1-for-1 scaling. For example, I think I have one that was in a mastery build, and I was basically in Ghost Wolf all the time because I always had like 25% more movement speed, which is a little strong.
Yeah.
Let's say. So maybe having it devalued by crit isn't necessarily such a bad thing because it does kind of prevent us from being a little overpowered. I'm going to go ahead and use that word.
Oh, gosh. The buzzwords today.
I try. But yeah, I think that our movement is a little more passive than it is for, say, Monk, but I would also say that in terms of movement speed, I would rather see it increase our chaos damage over our movement because movement is considered very overpowered after a certain point.
Correct, yeah. And I don't know what... Oh, go ahead, Ward, go ahead.
I think the thing is that it really does look like the amount of mastery damage increase you get per point is punished by the fact that the movement speed is put on there. Mm-hmm. Inverted commas for free, but it's really not for free.
It's a tuning thing, though. So we can get feedback on it. But...
Yeah, it's the big thing with the movement thing is, I agree that it's hard to quantify, but at the same time, Demon Hunters have got a lot of mobility built in, like instant reward mobility that you can use. So if you get caught off guard with the boss teleporting away, you can blink and you're next to him, and it's a really low cooldown on those blinks. So the movement speed sort of gets lost in the ether if you play it properly. Mm-hmm. It's just wasted stat. You'd obviously rather have it be double the amount of chaos damage because that movement speed could just be wasted.
I mean, yeah. I would say it's also a PvP concern, though.
It is,
That's what it's going to also come down to.
Yeah. But that... Not really, though, because in the long run, you have your stats set. So Blizzard can set how much movement speed a demon... Maybe you only have 12%. And even if you get, gear and gear through the expansion, you only get 1% stat sheet bonuses. So even if you get, like, 10% more, you'd have, like, 1% more movement speed. So they'll have a benefit for it. But for PvE raiders, obviously we get to a certain plateau in blue dungeon gear, and it'll scale very linearly. But you still might see, and of course they can change this, that's why it might be too much to give movement speed as a passive mastery, because you'll eventually get to see 25%, like you said, and that's really fast. Like, running around at 25% passive movement speed is a lot of free, and again, it's why it's a weird quantifiable DPS stat. So...
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it was basically like being in Ghost Wolf 24/7. It's like, I don't even feel the need to mount up at this point.
My side argument, too, is that Demon Hunters are already so mobile because you have 2 charges of Fel Rush, and you can technically prepare... You can glide with prepared forward. So, like, why do you need more movement? It's so... I mean, obviously it's a movement-based class, but still, it's like... It almost feels like it's too much.
Because it's our class fantasy bay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've sinned. All right, let's talk
thing
about...
is, you can end up like you can get so lost with how fast you go. Like it is an actual Sonic class if you go really hard on mastery and you're blinking around, and then you've also got Fellblade if you want to charge back because you went the wrong way or you got confused. So,
or if you're charging in initially, for that matter.
Yeah, and then you've got the artifact trait that resets your Fel Rush charges when you use Blur, so you can go even more. You have got a lot. You can run around Ironforge all day if you want.
Like I said, I'm on a Windwalker. I'm already used to this. What are you guys complaining about? I cheat torpedo everywhere.
And word up, we're losing our super fast Ghost Wolf. I'm so sad. It's so slow in Legion. I turn into Ghost Wolf and I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'm going a little faster. It's so sad. And then Demon Hunters are like, zip, 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 zip.
Yes,
zip.
already lost them. They're on the other side of the map.
Yeah,
right
they're
now.
gone.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Twin Blades of the Deceiver before we wrap up to give some Q&A time for the chat room. So before we do that, though, I'm going to interject the little in-show commercial break because I didn't realize how much we've been talking about already before. So I will be chatting off and to the viewers for just a moment real quick here and plugging some things, and then we'll talk about the Twin Blades, and then we'll talk about some questions that you might have had in chat. So first off, I'm going to give a big thank you to those that have ever supported the show through this means or the support that we get from Loot Crate, which if you don't know about Loot Crate yet, I mean, it's been around for a while, maybe, but they've recently expanded. They don't only have the one crate anymore now, they have the larger version. They have the level up one, which is mostly apparel. They have the Loot Pets. They also have Loot Anime, and they have more. Like, pick a crate. There's more here, too. They have the Firefly crates, which I think my friend Tia just got one, and she was geeking out super hard. There's also Loot Gaming as well. So they have limited edition crates for Star Wars and Call of Duty as well, if you like either of these franchises. Pfft, nerds. But if you use the link down below, or if you check out during your subscription period with the code Firelord, you'll save 10% off your monthly Loot Crate. I've been subscribed to Loot Crate for years. I've saved every box. It's there's a giant pile of them in the corner of my room. It's way taller than me, but it's a lot of fun. And of course, if you've ever seen any of the other content here on FinalBossTV, it's all put together and playlisted over on our YouTube channel, of course. And you can hit the guide button below the stream, as well as type !guide in chat right now. And I'm sure someone will do that to check out all the Legion coverage I have done and I put together for you. And then, of course, there are other tabs on the bottom of that document that go through all like the BlizzCon coverage or WoW Trivial Pursuit or other things we've done on the show, all the class halls, artifact weapons that are coming in the future, all right there for you in the channel guide because there's a lot of stuff. So go check that out if you want some more of what I do here on Final Boss TV. But let's talk about the Twin Blades of the Deceiver, which I did a little bit because I had to reference the Feast on the Souls, but Wordup, walk me through like the rest of the stuff here. I'm gonna make fun of you for a couple of these because they basically took 2 trinkets from HFC and gave them to you on your Twin Blades. So, yeah.
Well, that's the main perk. Yeah, the active is like a really souped up, really fast mirror of the Blade Master. You press it, does a lot of AoE, and then it's done. And then the major trait that interacts with it stores up that damage and blows up around it or onto a single target because it's a meteor for the damage it dealt. So it's mirror plus soul cap at the same time. So if you really, really enjoyed those in Hellfire and you thought that they had a lot of engaging gameplay, you now get to continue doing it at the same time in Legion.
Except it's not absorbing your damage. It is not exactly like Soul Kappa.
No, it's Soul Cap for only Fury of the Illidari's damage, which then still lays into this thing that you want to make sure you are Furying of the Illidari, either like gaming it on tons of ads. Like you could still game it like you could with Soul Capacitor. Like if a whole bunch of ads spawn and they all die within 6 seconds, so that the rage of the Illidari explosion hits only the boss, then yeah, you can still game it the same way.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is don't be bad.
Well, yeah.
Abuse it as
joking.
much as possible.
Abuse it, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The other 2 mages are a bit... One's a proc on Chaos Strike, so it's even more damage on Chaos Strike if it wasn't already strong enough. And the other one makes I-Beam store up damage and then detonate on a target's hit for the amount of times it was hit, so it scales with Blind Fury. The rest of it is just the standard X ability, deals a bit more damage, and then you've got the new one for Blade Dance, which is 10% more damage per target that are within 8 yards when you cast it. So if you had 10 targets there, it deals 100% more damage. So it scales up with the amount of mobs that you're hitting. Think like it's kind of like Fire Nova, like the more targets that are near you, the more it's going to do. And then the big one that's really good is Feast on the Souls, which we talked about before, which is the soul fragments reducing the cooldown on your cool demon abilities that you're going to use to do demony stuff, and Blur resetting the charges on Fell Rush, which is also, I suppose, kind of cool.
Well, yeah, that was going to bring up demon speed, which before, and I tested
Oh.
this in my video, it was that during blur, you could just spam Fell Rush, which they fixed it. They fixed it. So you can no longer fly. You can sort of fly, but you could glide in the air and then just spam it during blur, and you could actually still fly. But yeah, you get 2 charges if you use blur. So you can use 2 and then blur and then use 2 more, which is still a lot, but that was
There is a weird thing with that though, that it also works with Netherwalk when you take it because it replaces blur.
Right.
But when you use Netherwalk, you're pacified, so you can't cast anything. So you regain the charges, but you can't use them
until after the Netherwalk fades.
It's over.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just rolling through all these real quick here. Calli was talking a lot about the Demon Reborn or demonic synergies earlier, and the only thing you have really is obviously Demon or Metamorphosis is a 5-minute cooldown, but Unleash Demons makes it a 4-minute cooldown. So that's the only thing that has any sort of not haste-oriented GCD or cooldown lowering. So, I mean, what are you thinking of the, it's Varus and Muramos, the twin blades of the Deceiver. What do you have to add on to your artifact?
I mean, Wordup basically covered a lot of it. I like that. I feel like they actually have it pretty nailed down in terms of how ours work. Like, there's a couple that aren't really all that interesting, but they're early in it, and you can kind of skip them anyways. It's not a big deal. But I think that it kind of does add to a lot of the interactions that we seem to be missing, right off the bat that other classes already have.
Yeah, I mean, going back on the other soul fragment weirdness too, like I forgot, like overwhelming power. If you actually stun targets, you have a chance to generate soul fragments as well.
And it's a pretty good chance too.
Yeah,
it's
if you
30%.
get into stun, if you get into stun, you're gonna get a few fragments.
Yeah.
Usually, if it's a lot of adds together.
Yeah.
Which plays in that you're gonna get to stun again quicker because you're gonna lower the cooldown, so you're gonna get more fragments again. So it has a snowball effect. Say, like if you're in a CM. And
It's
you're
a ton
stacking
of
up loads
synergy,
of mobs.
yeah. I mean, a lot of it are just, passive buffs, like, for example, 30% more crit to Chaos Strike, which is like, oh, great, so I'm going to have so many more free Chaos Strikes until most likely there will be a soft cap for crit, because there always is.
How? Oh, go ahead. Is there anything else?
No, that's about it. It's like...
I'd say the Fury increase is also really, really big.
Yes.
Like,
as
getting
an
that
energy
extra
class,
buffer,
let me tell you how nice those kinds of increases are. They're really nice.
Oh, the 30
really, really
extra
nice.
Fury? Yeah, contained Fury.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially like when you get those resets and say that reset happened when you weren't expecting it, and then a soul spawned, and suddenly you would have capped, but instead you've got the buffer there that you can play around, which is really, really useful.
It's very good for pooling gameplay, basically. If you're trying to kind of save off a lot of Chaos Strikes for, oh, I need to burst this ad down real quick, or, I'm going to be having my procs or a cooldown come up. That's basically what it comes down to. Is this is great for pooling.
They changed something earlier with Blur, and it used to make you dodge spells as well. It no longer does that, correct?
Yeah, they overhauled Blur. It used to be that. Also, its duration could be increased up to, I think, 10 seconds every time you hit something.
As you attack, yeah.
But that's why the original Demon Speed was fine, because you had to be hitting stuff to be extending the blur duration, which you aren't doing if you're, jumping around and blinking everywhere. Yeah. But when they changed it to flat, it was crazy, which just resulted in the changes now.
Why I bring that up, though, is because of Deceiver's Fury on your artifact, which is dodging an attack or spell generates 15 Fury. So
that's what I'm kind of referencing. It's not really all that interesting other than going out in the world, because you're typically not going to be tanking stuff.
Right. Because before, when they didn't change Blur, you could actually pop Blur and dodge like AoE nonsense and gain a bunch of Fury. It was kind of like AMS nonsense, which with Death Knights have been doing for years. But you can't dodge spells anymore, technically?
I don't believe so, no.
So, yeah, there are a couple... That one's a weird one for me. I mean, dodging an attack, obviously when you're questing, makes sense, or whatever, but not everything can be for raids only. But,
it has a place. Kind of also like,
sure. Yeah. It has a place. I mean, you're gonna have sort of high dodge as an agility class anyway, so, yeah.
And you get the flat passive magic damage reduction, which is...
True.
Pretty great. You take 12% less magic damage, and a lot of the time, demons tend to do magic damage, which are going to be the whole expansion. So you take less for free, which is really good compared to some of the other defensives that artifacts have that are hot garbage, naming none
Yeah.
particularly.
Yep.
As someone who is playing a class right now with at least 2 artifact traits that I'm going to be avoiding, yeah, some of them are pretty much a wreck right now.
Some can be. I mean, not everything is designed. That was a big thing that came up to in Legion recently with, I think mostly the outlier was like equality on the Retribution Paladin, where they were like, when are we going to ever use this in a raid or in PvP? And like the dev response was like, not everything is designed for only raids and only PvP. So, which is kind of a PR answer, but in a way it also makes sense because the entire world of the Broken Isles will be max level with you, and there's hopefully lots of world-esque content because of all the class hall campaign and the missions you have to do, and the dailies you'll of course be doing, I guess, to get artifact power and stuff like that. So I hope not every class has that treatment, but that's why some of the things you might see in your spec are like, that'll never work unless I'm like getting hit in the face by an ogre, and that's why it's there. So there you go. Yeah. And is there anything else you wanted to go over, really? I thought there was one other weird interaction that I forgot to bring up, but I don't remember. Oh, it's the glide plus prepared either double jump nonsense or the macro that will make your prepared. I said it earlier, but I didn't explain why, and how you can prepared forward with glide as like a reverse disengage, or you can cancel prepared and actually not leave melee at all. Because
it seems like it's kind of similar to roll or chi torpedo rather, where whenever you jump, it kind of breaks it so you don't move forward, but you still cast the ability. That's kind of what I gathered from it in terms of the interaction.
It seems like they're mauling with it at the moment, because if you go on now, if you double jump forward and press Vengeful Retreat, it goes off, but you just carry on jumping. Mm-hmm. You don't go back. It just plays out the animation and keeps on going. So whether they want us to be animation cancelled or not, I don't know, but it's really good with prepared, and it's like an interesting interaction. It's a bit of clever use of game mechanics for the old like buzzwords in there. Mm-hmm. So
it is weird. It feels satisfying, but I just don't know if they want that synergy or that interaction to be a thing. The culprit is that glide can be used off the global cooldown, so it can be macroed into an ability with a global cooldown, and a double jump is built into the class itself, and you can double jump to break the fallback of using Vengeful Retreat. So I don't know. The only way they could ever do that is to like put glide on the global, which would be really weird. So I don't. It's a tough nut to crack, as it were.
I mean, yeah, like I said, it's not terribly different from roll with monks, where whenever you jump, mid-roll, it just cancels it. I don't necessarily see it going away just because of that interaction.
Right. Well, alrighty then. I am good for questions. I like Bink's comment right now. Wordup and Calli have Havoc hats on at the moment. Forget their current mains who are standing behind the curtains. Well, if you just tuned in, Wordup has made a gigantic, incredibly detailed guide, which I have linked all over the place, and I'm sure you can link right now in chat for you. It'll be in the YouTube description box as well. And Calli has not only has helped cultivate the Havoc Demon Hunter and the Demon Hunter Discord, but also testing a lot of things and raid testing on the Havoc Demon Hunter. So it's these two have made a lot of strides to help understand what the hell's going on with this spec. So just like last week when I had Sunny here on for Vengeance Demon Hunter, like she's done a lot of work on trying to figure out what this class is doing. So let me know if you have any questions right now in chat, or send them to us on Twitter, and we can take some questions for about 20 minutes or so. So go for it. While that comes in, though, I guess I wonder. Well, wait for questions. Or there's one right there. Never mind. What do you think Blizzard have learned anything from the release of the Death Knight problems? Oh, like imbalance?
I have so much of a rant for this one.
Go, Calli, go.
They claimed the same thing for monks. So monks at the gate, as you know, were kind of no one really wanted to play them because they weren't super overpowered. They weren't super powerful. So I would actually say it wasn't necessarily the Death Knight problem, but the Death Knight monk problem, where one class releases on one end of the spectrum where it's really overpowered. Everyone wants one. Everyone needs one. And then you have monks come out where it's like, well, I guess just monk played Windwalker for a tier, and now he's Brewmaster like all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm hoping that they will kind of learn from that as well, that even though Demon Hunter has this kind of hype built around it, that it looks really cool and stuff, that just having it balanced so that it's competitive but not super overpowered and not super underpowered with, just the single target niche that Windwalker had it right out the gate. I'm really hoping that that's what they go for, because that is the lesson to be learned here, is don't release it too weak, like what happened with Monk, and don't release it too strong, like what happened with Death Knight, because that's just not fun for anyone.
It's a very scary thing. I brought this up before on the stream, and the new secondary stat balancing and the gigantic forum post that Celestalon made about the power creep and the overall power modifier numbers in Legion will be much lower. That doesn't mean there won't be power gulfs. And in High Mall, and even in early BRF, there was like a 10 to 13% power gulf from top spec to bottom spec for DPS. But now in Hellfire, it's like 34% or something awful. Like,
yeah,
there are some specs right now that are so weak, they just can't. I mean, right now it's all farm mode, but for progression standpoints, it's still stayed with like warriors and demon hunt, warlocks, warriors, and death knights
mages
early on, and mages, I guess, early on too. Like the power creep was huge, and I'm just scared for all the new talents, all the new spells, and especially the power involved in an artifact.
I think the
with
artifact
regards
power
to
is
the DK,
going to be kind of an issue because, sorry, I don't mean
go
to
ahead.
talk over you. Did I talk over someone? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Calli.
I think the artifact thing is something that's already being kind of highlighted. Like I mentioned, whenever I was raid testing, I have 104 Demon Hunter because I've had to remake a few tunes because they keep getting locked in the void. And I was versus someone who was 108, basically had his full artifact already done. And it was like a 50k DPS difference. Yeah. It was pretty massive.
Yep.
The thing before about DKs, I think the Monk thing was mostly them trying really, really, really hard to not repeat DKs because everyone had made a joke out of the fact that the first 6 months they were broken. And so they were really careful and then released something a bit not
Too
good.
Careful.
And this time, I think they just sort of decided, okay, well, we'll just release whatever. It doesn't matter whatever happens because they're going to make a joke out of it anyway. So what does it matter?
Well,
or at least I hope that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
As long as we get buffed, because right now, according to logs, tuning needs to happen. Tuning very much needs to happen.
Tuning won't happen, and that's what people keep asking me when I do all these streams. And they're like, well, why are you looking at damage numbers right now? It's because I'm looking at the anti-tuning problem, which is the percentage of damage from certain abilities compared to others, or how a talent evolves. Or you can see your damage disparities, or where, for a DPS standpoint, what the problems might be. And the problems might be for Havoc is that, like, there's so much in Chaos Strike that other abilities just suck. So that's a problem that can't go right. It's like Fist
Where
of
it's like,
Fury
it's not even worth hitting this button.
Right, yeah. Oh, like Fist of Fury went through so many different interactions and iterations, and like with the problem with Multi-Strike and Fist of Fury and Tiger Eye Brew for Windwalker, this whole damn expansion. Like, there are just problems that arise that you have to find now and hopefully make sure the devs know, which I try, and these people are here, we're trying too, because we don't want that initial huge power gulf to be like, all of a sudden, well, 9 specs are terrible. And then they nerf the other ones, or they buff those, and they buff those, and like the next tier, those ones that they buffed are now too powerful, they gotta nerf those. It's scary. It's so scary. So, but that's numbers for you, and there's lots of math in WoW. It's easier with no multi-strike anymore, though. No multi-strike is like a...
Yeah, that does make it quite a bit less obnoxious.
Right.
Yeah.
It does.
Agreed. Right. I mean, multi-strike, I have an entire rant about how it was nothing but basically glorified crit, other than a few classes got interactions with it. Like, I know Guardian Druids had some kind of interaction.
It seemed like it was a way of keeping mechanics in, but diversifying stats. So instead of it just being everyone gets a crit mechanic, it was like half the people get a crit mechanic and half the people get a multi-strike mechanic. And there you go. You're different classes now. So you like different items.
Yeah. So there's one question that came in, and we're on this whole like ranting about DPS numbers and whatever. The other big hotbed is, which it's been data mined in a way, is the utility word. And I talked about this on my big birthday bonanza last week, And as a DPS, I don't know what the awkward fixation it is that so many players have that they feel like they need to bring something other than just being a capable A player, B a DPS that doesn't stand in fire, and C doesn't die to nonsense, and they can handle mechanics. Your utility is helping kill the boss. Am I
It's
wrong?
like the
Because of balance
buzzword of
numbers.
the, it's
It
the
really comes down
buzzword
to
of the
balance.
now.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like everyone has to talk about utility, and to me, a lot of the time when I see posts on it, I can understand that utility is a thing. Like having a raid cooldown is useful, and it does contribute to whether
Sure.
or not you can optimize your class. But a lot of the time when I hear it being said, it does sound a lot like it's not we want utility, it's we want mass grip, or we want the next ability that is going to be so
Yeah.
OP that no matter
Yeah.
how bad our damage is, they're going to take us anyway. So we could do no damage, but they will take us because we have the game-breaking mechanic, which isn't asking for utility, that's asking for a guaranteed raid spot, which sounds like it's not the same.
Well, yeah, and you have to consider kind of Mist of Pandaria to Warlords of Draenor. Mist of Pandaria, every melee had some kind of raid cooldown except Windwalker. And I know that for a fact because I kept track of that. We
You're
had
right, you're
no
right.
real raid utility at all. And I will use that in a sentence.
Yeah.
In a proper sentence. Then we come to Warlords of Draenor, where, Enhancement Shaman, in my opinion, got hit the hardest because you lost tons of your off healing, you lost Stormlash, Rhett lost Diva Aura, but they still had a lot of utility in terms of the blessings they had. Warrior lost their own crit banner, but then they still had Rallying Cry, and then Windwalker got move speed that no one notices is even there. So it kind of turns into, well, what's my actual utility? Oh, but you can't count Smoke Bomb because it's only 10% and it's only on the melee, and that's why it's getting called in every progression raid boss. And, it's not like... So, without kind of going onto that tangent, it's turned into an arms race a lot of the time, and
that's the
whenever
word I'm
one
looking
person
for.
has one
Yeah.
raid cooldown, everyone else loses. Especially the classes such as Windwalker that just didn't have one. You basically brought a Windwalker during Mist of Pandaria because you had a friend who just was really good at it. And I had a mythic raid spot all throughout Mists. Like, I raided competitively throughout Mists because I brought the damage, basically, and I also used, some of our Windwalker soaking mechanics.
Yeah.
However, I felt like I didn't contribute as much to the raid as, say, the Enhancement Shaman, who not only was really good DPS, but also had like 500,000 different cooldowns that he could use to help the raid at a different time.
It's
the constant thing of people who want extra stuff, but they always want it for free. So you'll see the post and it'll say, our damage isn't good enough, this needs to be buffed, this needs to be buffed, and we need utility. And if the rule came in instead that you can have utility, but you do 10% less damage, suddenly I suspect a lot of the calls to want it will be a lot quieter, because you don't want to be punished for having a tool because you can use the tool wrong or it can not be needed.
I strongly agree with that. And that's one thing that they kind of went toward with Windwalkers and Warlords, is that we didn't have a raid CD per se, but we had really strong damage. I would agree, probably too strong of damage in terms of our cleave. The problem with that then is that then they nerfed our damage to the ground because people were complaining about it, forgetting, hey, other classes are going to scale a lot better than Windwalker in terms of set bonuses and trinkets and such. And we were already showing, hey, we're actually going to be kind of like top middle whenever BRF came out. So then they nerf us 20% and call it a day.
Yeah.
That's kind of the danger you run into with not having that type of utility and just saying, well, you can bring more damage or you can bring utility. Pick one.
It's such a frustrating thing from my perspective, because I always thought that, and Zosan also called you out a little bit, Calli, and said ZenMed was your utility.
Yeah, that was used for one fight. Come on.
Or
and I already mentioned, so.
And my other call out for you was that what quantifies utility if it's not a raid cooldown? Because you can bring up Black Fuse, and Windwalker monks were fantastic on the belt.
Hey, there were a lot of other classes, though, that were very good for the
Of
belt.
course,
because
hunters
we weren't necessarily... Yes.
Hunters and
not...
Windwalkers, yeah.
Hunters and Windwalkers, yeah. But it's still, like, to me, that's almost enough of that stupid utility word, because you can't have, unless you have a Rallying Cry. And not every class can... Oop, that boop, though. Not every class can have...
All right, I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Not every class can have a raid
For
cooldown.
Black Fuse, yes, we could do every single belt, but we weren't actually the best for the belts. We were actually better on the ground dealing with the bombs because our AoE was actually fantastic that tier for rushing Jade Wind. Hunters were technically better on the belts, as were other classes. We were basically considered better for the belts because we could survive them more easily.
And a free stun for the bombs, which was also good.
Oh, yeah. True.
Oh, dear.
Oh.
The ultimate thing with utility, I mean, Demon Hunters have got something already because Netherwalk is, however you split it, it is utility because soaking a mechanic is. We all did Black Hand, and we all saw the fact that you could only do Black Hand with really specific classes that had to immune things. So Demon Hunters can do that. They're automatically not the worst for utility. There's also this data mine thing that's floating around, which is Darkness, which is basically raid evasion, which is kind of weird. But I'd say on the whole, it's not the worst state to be in for them if you want to talk about their buzzword tools. But at the same time, it needs to stop being the only topic that people bring up to decide whether a class is good or bad.
Yeah, I'm showing a Darkness stream right now. So Darkness reads a 3-minute cooldown. You summon darkness around you in a 15-yard radius, cloaking friendly targets and reducing the chance they are hit by spells and melee attacks by 50% for 10 seconds. So it's an AoE evasion that works on spells also. And I'll be the first one to say that this could be incredibly powerful for certain debuffs that you might be able to dodge the application of them. First off was the Tichondrius testing for the damn Carrion Swarm and the debuff itself, the Carrion Plague or whatever it was called. So this, I don't know. This sounds really good, but it might be a little too good. So
it does also have the room, though, when you read it, to be incredibly infuriating. So
yeah, sure.
If you use this cooldown and say one big boss hit comes on the raid and half of the raid dodges it and half of the raid doesn't, and unfortunately the half of the raid that didn't are the ones who also forgot to use the personals, so they die, and then the other people who did use the personals dodged anyway, so they took no damage. So having RNG raid cooldowns seems like a dodgy thing to me. No puns, but I mean, I don't know about it. I'm very on the fence.
Yeah, it looks like, I hope they don't just put this in for you to quell this stupid argument, because I just don't. Because we brought this up building the show a little bit, where Retribution Paladins were like, am I going to be worth it to bring to raids? And they give you one of the only and the strongest of any of the only DPS buff in the game, in Might rather. Might is so strong, and then they're like, we want more, apparently. What?
Yeah, I mean, I think people should just be more worried about how the class plays, and if it's actually raid viable on its own. If the tools it brings, its damage package and everything like that is fine, then their utility is extra. If you have that as well, that's great. But if you rely on that utility to be your way of getting into a raid, then you end up with things like, say, fights where, let's take an example of Grounding Totem, where it would work on a mechanic. You wouldn't take them for everything else. You just sub them in for that fight where you need Grounding Totem, and then you sub them back out, because there's no reason to take them for the other 10 fights. And if your utility is that, and your damage is bad, but you've got utility on the hope that it'll get you into raids, that's a really bad situation. You don't want to encourage that or hope for that. Yeah.
No, it's rough. I don't know. So, Calli, can you hear me right now? I don't think you can hear me right now. Yeah? Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had software muted so that I wouldn't continue booping. Yeah. It just needed a little bit of juice because the battery completely died. Seems fine now, though.
Okay, you're back. You're slowly coming back into volume. You're really quiet for the moment, but okay.
Huh. That's odd.
It is odd. I guess the other question that was coming up here that I saw a couple times, and Yahweh just posted it again. What do you think the DPS slot, getting 2 new classes, Demon Hunter and Survival Hunters, will look like in raids, since there seem to be more and more players going to be melee? I mean, in Mythic, it all just comes down to your raid roster. Really. I mean, most Mythic raid leaders are always going to bring more range than melee anyway, so...
Depends on the fight.
I think some of the fights are leading towards them actually pushing it to be like a 50-50 split instead of it being like a 40-60 or a 30-70 split between melee and ranged, which is something they actually really have needed to do for a while. But if they do it now, that's fine as well, because at the moment you can already tell there's going to be like 500 Illidan's on your server running around who all want raid spots. So you're going to need to make room for them.
Yeah, and also, like, we had a few people that wanted to swap, but they're already playing, say, Mage or Warlock, and we're like, no. We're not getting more melee. We are already really melee stacked.
Right.
But a lot of the people you'll see re-rolling to Demon Hunter, for example, typically will be a melee player because, I mean, switching up your role is a lot bigger than switching up your class, in my opinion.
Right.
The other side of it, too, is hunters are better for a lot of the jobs because they're much more mobile DPS. If I see a survival hunter in a raid, I will actually be like, well, then who's actually, running traps or whatever, because hunters are generally better equipped for that.
Yeah. This question comes up so often that I don't know how to... There's no quantifiable answer, because it's not an issue if you're in a mythic hardcore progression-oriented guild, because you guys will figure it out, because you've only got probably 24, 26 people. So if one of them swaps to a different melee as a melee, they're still out of melee. So you might make a comp change based on an encounter you're about to do, but you're not going to all of a sudden go like, oh, well, we're going to like take out 2 ranged and put in 2 more melee slots. Depends on the encounter. Yeah. And if you're not in a mythic raiding guild, if you're in a normal or heroic raiding guild, you've got up to 30 people. You can bring whoever the F you want. Mm-hmm. So why does it matter to even ask that question? Like, it's not going to matter. It's just not going to matter. It's not.
Yeah, and it also just depends on the players. Like, I'm not entirely sure who in my raid team will be swapping. I know that we had a few range that are interested in. They're really good players. So if they do, I'll be like, hey, I have someone I can bounce ideas off of and talk to and stuff. I'm cool with that. But then they have to remember, hey, this is a melee spot. Those are kind of competitive, very competitive.
Sure.
Yeah, it's very... They tend to be in guilds very, very performance-oriented if you're a melee. That if you aren't good enough, then you tend to be very quickly ousted about the fact that you're dying all the time, or your damage is low, or this or that. I mean, especially in Mythic, I don't think it really matters that much, because a lot of melee players these days, not all, but a lot, are at least flexible enough that they know if what they're doing or what they're on is really bad, that they'll go on something else, or they'll just sit out and they'll stand back. Mm-hmm. So that's something I think a lot of ranged players aren't used to, because ranged is, if you're ranged, you don't get to leave. You are there for life. You don't get off the ride.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah.
Whereas if you're melee, sometimes you just have to be able to sit back and say, well, enhancement really sucks on this fight, so I'm not going to be in anymore, and that's that. It's fine. I'm going to go and play like Cookie Clicker or something.
Where's Eladia to tell me how was Mythic Blackhand progression as I was enhancement? It was okay, Eladia, all right? I went Super Saiyan 3 and did a burst rotation each of the 3 phases. It was okay. It was really bad, but it was okay. I'm watching you, Eladia, you butthead. Yeah. But yeah, certain fights...
I mean, I personally have got like... I've always got my rogue ready, whereas... So if enhancement is so bad and rogues are really, really broken, I'll just go... Okay, then I'll switch to that. I won't like it, and I'll be a little bit salty about the fact that I'm not playing my pet class, but I'll still do it. And
Yep, that was me. I have Rogue, Ret, Paladin, and my Windwalker, but I also have Shaman and Druid, but Shaman and Druid weren't... No offense, guys. I mean, I'm kind of sad about it, too. Shaman and Druid weren't that great this entire expansion, so I never really cared to gear them.
Now, you mean the melee versions, because Balanced Druid was very good.
Well, what else would I be playing? True. Why would I play a ranged?
Yeah, I know. I gotcha. I'm actually really torn right now if I want to play a ranged ult for split runs in Legion to show people a ranged POV and a melee POV, because all I stream is melee. I'm just always looking at bosses' asses, so I wonder if I should try that. I really like the new Fire Mage, but I don't know if I'll probably be terrible. I'll be like, I stand so far away, there's so much more space! So, I don't know, we'll see. But
yeah, I get overwhelmed.
Because I'm so used to running back and forth that I can't play a range because I have to stand and cast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get very overwhelmed by just all the options. I could go left, I could go right, I could go backwards if I'm a range.
You can jump.
But no, I can't jump because I've got a cast. That's the big thing. I can't jump and I can't side-to-side strafe. So if I can't do those, I can't play a ranged, unfortunately. So I just stick with any melee as long as I can do that.
Yeah, it's weird. Any other last-minute questions here before we plug some more things and get out of here? I don't know if I was trying to scroll through I have 2 different chat windows up, and I was trying to look for other questions. I didn't really see any other ones that weren't the whole, like, pruning argument, which I think is just stupid.
It's a little bit difficult to talk about pruning on a class that's not even on live.
Yeah, I think it was mostly a Legion pruning
I think the issue has just become so overblown as is right now. I mean, things have been pruned, and a lot of the time, my biggest opinion is that I see a lot of people who use references to shaman totems, because I'm a shaman, so I see them straight away. And they say, grounding totem is gone, I'm not happy about it. How many times did you honestly use grounding totem that wasn't a bug, that wasn't not intended or got hotfixed after? And a lot of the time, it tends to be
PvP.
Very little, if ever. So if they or PvP, from a raiding standpoint, and when that's the case, people want there to be a time when you can use grounding totem. They'll demand that its utility, it needs its chance to shine, and that means that there has to be a mechanic that's designed around it, which isn't feasible when you've got all of these really weird tremors and grounding totem and windwalk, and it just becomes too much. Sometimes things have to go to make things better.
Right. No, you're totally right. And just to caveat, there might be new people in chat right now. This is the WoW Endgame rating show, FinalBossTV. It's about killing dragons. So, and to even preface the PvP argument, every single spec is going through these changes. So the PvP game is changing. You also have your new stat sheet balance that Blizzard will determine to keep balance more in a way that you have to be a more skilled player. As well as you have your own talent tree now. Finally, but all you like this not all of you. Many that I see are always about like, well, I've lost this ability and this ability is now a talent that I can't take because this one's also it's just you're relearning the game with the rest of us. So a year from now, if it's terrible, the devs will look at it. But like, this is a PvE show. So we don't talk about PvP stuff really because it doesn't really matter too much anymore, especially because they are really trying to hard separate the two in Legion. So, but yeah,
and also, I mean, you gotta have a focus.
Gotta have a focus, of course, absolutely. But I
think that's actually a good question that I can kind of tackle is monk movement versus demon hunter movement. I actually did talk about this a little bit in Zen meditation because I did kind of a smackdown of the two of them. Demon Hunter does have a lot of what I call active movement, which is what Monk has, and you consider it as roll, charges, things like that. That's an active movement spell. Monk has quite a few of those. I think our roll can go up to 3 or 4 charges now in Legion because of an artifact trait. We also have Tiger's Lust that we can choose to talent into, and we also have Flying Serpent Kick. So we have about 5 active abilities that are movement. Demon Hunter gets Vengeful Retreat, Fell Rush, and then basically Fell Blade, I think it was, that you can kind of talent into, and you get passive movement. So Demon Hunter versus Monk comes down to Demon Hunter tends to be a little bit more passive movement and movement that does damage, whereas Monk has a lot of kind of, well, we can move very quickly, but it's on a bit of a cooldown. It's not very, they're still very movement oriented, but Demon Hunter is definitely more movement oriented because of the passive mastery that we receive.
I think monks are much more versatile in the types of movement they have as well.
Yes.
So they have like Transcendence Port, they have the Flying Serpent Kick right across the map, you have your roll, little charges, you have sprint. That's whereas Demon Hunter is very one-dimensional, forward or back, and then
like I said, Demon Hunter is much more passive, whereas Monk is much more active. I can actively choose whenever I want to have the additional movement speed and where I want to use it and how I want to use it, whereas Demon Hunter is like, I'm going to run this way now very fast because I have a lot of mastery apparently.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, every class has different movement options now, and they're sort of fine-tuning which ones have them. So, I mean, I haven't heard like the warriors complaining that Vengeance Demon Hunter has their heroic leap, but only heroic leap should be theirs. Meh. So, yeah, it's just sometimes some things overlap. Sometimes people get really neat, fun little abilities that only they have. But yeah, the arms race stuff we were talking about earlier is just frustrating.
Yeah. So in terms of which has more movement, I would say that it depends on the type of movement you're looking at.
Yep. Absolutely. Anything else you guys want to wrap up with? I guess the wrap up here real quick is where can people out in the community right now find more information about Havoc Demon Hunter? So are there websites, forums? There's a Discord link, of course, that I'll be linking in the video description box on YouTube as well, and we can jump it in chat right now. But what else is out there, Calli, if you want to plug the things?
I mean, I'm working on creating a site for Demon Hunters right now. It's expected to launch right around Legion times. Right now, there's basically a MMO champion. There is Warden's Vault that someone else created as well. But that is mostly just kind of a, hey, we're working on making resources and guides and stuff. It doesn't really have a forum just yet.
Okay. Yeah, the best place for discussion at the moment is probably Discord. You're going to get the best out of that because it's a lot more active. Resources, you've got the Google Doc, and I've done a couple of videos on it as well, though I've not finished with what I'm doing on it. And then you've got MMO Champion. And other than that, there's not really anything else yet, but it's slowly building, I think.
You just posted a video today, didn't you not?
Yes, just before the show, actually. I rushed to get it up.
Yeah. So those will all be, of course, linked in the video description box on YouTube, and you'll have links if you want to join the Discord server over there, the Google Doc, as well as Word's YouTube. You can find that there. But if you also want to watch this show later, you can check the whole thing on YouTube. We're also on iTunes and Stitcher. Just look up FinalBossTV or FinalBoss WoW. But I think that's gonna do it. Where's my button? I can't. There's so much stuff on my screen. There it is. So thank you all so much for being here for episode number 114 of FinalBossTV. Today talking about the Havoc Demon Hunter. Let's Talk Legion Volume 6. We're out with him real quick to my guests one more time. There's Calligraphy. You can go follow her on Twitter at CalligraphyWow, which changed recently.
Yep. Because I will likely not be a monk.
Yeah, it was Calli Monk. I had to look that up. I was like, really? This is because I was going to use your old art, but I was like, I gotta make. I don't even know how to change a Twitter name. How do you change a Twitter name? Is it easy?
You just go into your settings and change it.
Oh, but I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But I noticed that. But thank you for all the stuff you were doing with the testing and the Discord stuffs. And do you? I was going to ask about the website, but you probably don't know too much about it. Are you making it all yourself, or like anyone else helping you with it? You wanna plug and thank?
I did have an artist that was doing art assets, but they are kind of out of commission right now. They haven't been feeling so well, so I'm kind of looking for someone it is paid to do some art assets for it.
So I guess hit you up on Twitter if you want to make art for the new Demon Hunter website. There you go.
Yes.
That's all the plug space you'll get. No, that's awesome. That's really good. Very good. And then there's Wordup over here. You can follow him on Twitter at Vaughn_Wordup. You can find all of our socials linked elsewhere, and you can probably just I think someone said it in my Discord that they Googled Storm Strike and they got your shaman guide.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Well, I'm really happy about it. I feel like I've made it then.
I've made it!
If that's an important thing, yeah.
Yeah, Google knows where you are. I mean, your guide's kind of popular. I'm just saying. Maybe a little bit. Just a little bit. But thank you for all the work you've been doing, sir, and you're slaving over Google documents to make those guides. They're kind of pretty. So thank you, sir.
Well, it's what I do, yeah. I do enjoy making pretty documents. And spreadsheet.
Oh, and spreadsheet.
I saw the spreadsheet that you designed. It is top of the line. I love Rotun's spreadsheets. They have a lot of information. Yours are a lot more eye candy.
Yeah, eye candy is really important.
Very good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all both for being here, of course. If you want to check out more about FinalBossTV and other people involved in the communities and other websites and things that are developed right now for other specs, go check out FinalBossTV on the Firelord's favorite page. Thank you all so much for being here. Next week on volume number 7, I hope to do range DPS, but I'm not sure what class combination I'm going to have just yet. Finding the guests, of course, is always a little difficult, so check me out on Facebook and Twitter for updates on those. If you have questions for any type of Legion class or anything Legion-oriented, just send them to the Ask a Boss button below the stream or on the website as well. If I don't know the answer myself, I can link you somewhere, or if it's for an upcoming show, might pull your question out and use it in the notes. So thank you all so much for being here yet again. Everyone behind the scenes, thanks to you as well. Trusting your seal of inevitable gold as you try for Warforged gear. Damn it. And so thanks everybody.